It started with a lie, just a little one. The kind you tell when you're too embarrassed to admit the truth. I told my coworkers I had a boyfriend. I don't even know why I said it. Maybe it was the way Amanda kept trying to set me up with her yoga instructor, or how everyone always assumed I was single because I was too picky. Whatever the reason, the lie just slipped out one day during lunch break, like it had been waiting. "He's in tech," I said casually, twirling my straw around in my iced coffee. "Met him at a friend's birthday thing." The worst part? They totally bought it. Eyes lit up, questions flew. "What's his name? What does he look like?" I panicked. Mark," I said. "Tall, kinda shy, works in cybersecurity." Boom. Done. I figured it would blow over. A few nods, some oohs and ahs, and we'd all move on. Except we didn't. Every week, someone asked about Mark. How was he? What were we doing that weekend? Had they met him? So I did the only thing that made sense to my increasingly twisted logic. I found a guy on Instagram who matched the vibe and made him Mark. He was some random dude with less than 500 followers, mostly photos of coffee, books, and a sleepy golden retriever. He lived in another city and didn't post often, which made it easy. I screenshotted a couple of his pics. Nothing weird, just him at a coffee shop or holding his dog, and used them to prove his existence. The lie grew legs. Mark became real, with a favorite brunch spot and a Spotify playlist. He loved indie movies and hated mushrooms on pizza. I started talking about him like I actually knew him. And then, 3 months later, he walked into my office. For real. I was sitting at my desk, halfway through an email, when I heard Amanda's voice behind me. "Oh, speak of the devil! Isn't that your boyfriend?" I turned around, heart stopping. There he was. Instagram Mark, in the flesh, wearing a lanyard with a guest pass and a confused smile. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Hi," he said, voice low and polite. "I'm looking for Jenna? I'm here to consult on the UX redesign." Jenna, UX redesign, guest consultant. Oh my God, he wasn't just here. He was working with us. I stood up slowly. "You must be Mark." His eyes flicked to me, and something shifted. A pause. The way his brow furrowed just slightly. "Yeah," he said, like a question. And that's when I knew I was completely, utterly screwed. The next 15 minutes were a blur of introductions and fake smiles. Jenna, our lead designer, was thrilled to have Mark on board. I, on the other hand, was quietly dying inside. I kept waiting for him to say something, to call me out, but he didn't. He just shook hands, made polite conversation, and took a seat across the open office, close enough that I could hear his keyboard clicks, but far enough that I couldn't ask the one question pounding in my brain. Did he know? At lunch, I ducked out early, practically sprinting to the park down the block. I needed air. I needed to think. What were the odds? I had scrolled through hundreds of profiles before landing on his. I'd picked him because he seemed low-key, unproblematic, normal. Now he was sitting 20 feet away, looking even better in person. Taller, more real. His voice had depth, warmth. And when he smiled, God help me, it wasn't like a guy trying to look good for Instagram. It was just genuine. I sat on a bench, hands buried in my pockets, trying to figure out how to fix this. Do I come clean? Hope he never finds out? Or pretend this is some hilarious coincidence? I was still spiraling when I heard footsteps. "You always eat out here?" I looked up. And there he was, Mark. In the flesh. I forced a laugh. "Only when the walls are closing in." He smiled and sat next to me, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I thought I recognized you." Took me a second, but then I remembered. "You followed me on Instagram a while back. Never messaged, though." Shit. He knew. My stomach dropped. "Right, yeah. I think I found your dog through a hashtag and followed." Hope that wasn't weird. Mark tilted his head, studying me. "That's one way to find people. Did you know you used my pictures?" I blinked. "What?" "My pictures. I saw one of your coworkers' Instagram stories. She tagged you and said something about Eli's perfect boyfriend, Mark. Then I saw my face. He wasn't smiling anymore. Look, I started, but he held up a hand. I'm not mad, he said. Just curious. Why me? I didn't have an answer. Not a good one. You seemed real. Not like an influencer. I never thought we'd meet. He nodded, slow and quiet. That's honest, at least. A long silence settled between us. I didn't know whether to apologize again or just get up and run. Then he said, "You ever think about what it'd be like if it was real?" That caught me off guard. What? He shrugged. You created this whole version of me. The coffee, the playlists, the pizza thing. What if you weren't that far off? I stared at him. You like black coffee? 2 sugars, but close enough. Indie movies? I have Moonlight and Her on Blu-ray. Spotify playlists? He pulled out his phone and opened his app. His top playlist was titled Night Drives and Bad Decisions. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Wow. Mark gave me a small smile. So what now, Eli? I swallowed. I don't know. I didn't plan this far ahead. He looked out at the park, thoughtful. Well, maybe we try something crazy, like starting from scratch. My breath caught. You mean like coffee, real coffee, no lies. Just 2 guys who maybe started things a little weird. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in weeks, the tight coil of anxiety in my chest started to loosen. Okay, I said. Let's get coffee. We didn't talk much on the walk to the coffee shop. It was one of those spring afternoons where the air feels new, like the city's been washed clean overnight. Mark walked beside me, hands in his jacket pockets, glancing over every so often like he still wasn't sure if this was real. To be honest, neither was I. I kept expecting him to change his mind, to stop mid-step and say, actually, forget it, but he didn't. When we reached the place, this small indie spot with terrible seating and incredible espresso, he opened the door and gestured for me to go first. So, he said once we were seated, tell me who I was. I blinked. What? Your fake boyfriend, he said, stirring his drink. What was I like? I smiled, a little embarrassed. You were quiet, thoughtful, the kind of guy who listens more than he talks. You read a lot, mostly sci-fi, and you had a dog named Leo who hated peanut butter. Mark raised an eyebrow. Leo loves peanut butter. Damn, strike one, he grinned. Go on. You hated mushrooms on pizza. You loved thunderstorms. You slept on your side and always stole the blankets. Mark laughed into his coffee. Blanket thief, huh? Sounds like a real menace. I sipped mine, eyes still on him. It was stupid, I know. I got tired of feeling like something was wrong with me. Like being single meant I was broken. His smile softened. It's not stupid, it's lonely. Yeah, I said quietly. It was. We sat in silence for a moment, just the hum of the espresso machine and clink of cups around us. Then Mark leaned forward. I've done stuff like that too, he said. Made up versions of people in my head. Safe versions. Ones that didn't disappoint me. Yeah, he nodded. It's easier than putting yourself out there. Less messy. But also, he paused. It's not real. No, I agreed. It's not. Another beat passed before he said, You want to know the weirdest part? What? I've been following you back for months. I stared at him. He shrugged. I saw your page the day you followed me. You seemed interesting, normal, not curated. And I liked that. I swallowed. You never said anything. I didn't know what to say. Hey, I think your captions are funny. Want to grab coffee even though we live in different cities. Well, I said, heart pounding. Now we're in the same city. Yeah, he said, giving me that look again. The one that was too calm, too steady. Now we are. We finished our drink slowly. He asked about my job. I asked about his consulting work. It was easy. Easier than it had any right to be. When we finally left the shop, the sun was low, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. "So," I said, trying to sound casual, "what happens now?" Mark looked at me, hands in his pockets again, like he was weighing something heavy. "I have to be in the office all week. But after that, I'm here for a while. Maybe longer. You moving here?" "Thinking about it," he said. "Depends." "On?" He smiled. "Whether or not I'm seeing someone." I raised an eyebrow. "You're not." "No," he said. "But maybe I could be." I didn't say anything. Just nodded, a slow, stunned grin spreading across my face. "Cool," I said. "Cool." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to end in disaster. The rest of the week passed in this strange, surreal limbo. Mark was in the office every day, just a few rows over, typing quietly on his laptop or sketching wireframes in his notebook. We didn't talk much at work, didn't want to start rumors, but there was this undercurrent between us now, a shared glance, a smile when we passed each other, a new kind of electricity. And then Friday rolled around. He stopped by my desk as I was shutting down my computer. "You free tonight?" he asked, voice low. I nodded before he even finished the question. "Good," he said. "Dinner. 7, I'll text you the address." It wasn't anything fancy, just a cozy little Mediterranean place tucked behind a bookstore. We got a corner booth, the kind where you sit close without meaning to. Mark ordered wine, I got lemonade, and we split a bunch of small plates. Conversation was easy. Too easy. We talked about our worst dates, our favorite childhood shows, the most embarrassing things we'd ever done. He told me he once farted during a group meditation class and blamed it on the cushions. I told him I once accidentally liked a hot guy's photo from 4 years back while stalking his Instagram, and then followed him to make it seem intentional. "Bold," he said, laughing. It did not work. By the time dessert came, I was already a little buzzed, not from wine, but from him. The way he listened, really listened. The way his smile curled slowly, like it had to travel through a maze of thoughts before it reached his lips. We left the restaurant, full and a little flushed, walking without a destination. "Do you always walk after dinner?" he asked. "Only with fake boyfriends I'm trying to make real." That made him laugh. "Well, I'm flattered." We wandered until we found ourselves by the river. The water reflected the city lights, rippling and golden. We stood there for a while, not saying anything, just watching. "I used to come here when I felt stuck," I said, surprising even myself with the honesty. "When I didn't know what the hell I was doing with my life." "You seem like you've got it together," I snorted. "That's the trick. You say that enough and people start to believe it." Mark looked at me then, really looked. "I don't think you're lost. I think you're just waiting for something to catch up with you." My breath hitched, then he stepped a little closer. "You okay with this?" he asked, and his hand brushed mine. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He took my hand properly then, warm and solid, and we stood there like that. Two idiots, hands clasped like teenagers, staring at a river. I should have kissed him, every part of me was screaming to, but we didn't. Not yet. Somehow it was more intimate this way. Eventually, he walked me home. At my door, he leaned against the frame. "So," he said. "No fake stuff tomorrow?" "Nope, only real boyfriends allowed," he smirked. "Good, because I'd like to take you out again." "You're dangerously close to becoming a habit." "Is that bad?" I shook my head. "No, not bad at all." He leaned in like he was going to kiss me, then stopped short. "Next time," he said, grinning. "Make it count." And then he was gone. I stood there for a long time after, grinning like a fool, my hands still warm from his. The second date was even better. We met at a vintage arcade bar, his idea, which I liked. It wasn't a dimly lit wine bar or an overpriced rooftop, just something fun, easy, real. He was waiting outside when I arrived, sipping from a canned cocktail and looking infuriatingly casual in a denim jacket and black jeans. When he saw me, he grinned like the whole night had just improved. "You showed," he said, handing me a drink. "I was 90% sure you'd bail." "Only 90? I'm optimistic." Inside, we traded coins for tokens and made our way through everything from skee-ball to Mortal Kombat. I found out he was competitive in the best way, not a sore loser, but a smug winner. After I beat him at air hockey, he demanded 2 out of 3. When I lost the rematch, he fist-bumped the air like he'd just won Wimbledon. "Do I get a trophy?" he asked. "You get a high five in the knowledge that you beat someone who hasn't touched an arcade game since high school." "I'll take it." We ended up in a booth near the back, the wall behind us vibrating faintly from the bass of some retro synth track. The neon lights flickered over his face, painting his features in shifting blues and reds. He looked unreal in that moment, like some cool 80s movie character brought to life. "So, serious question," he said, sipping his drink. "Are we telling your coworkers about us?" I hesitated. "I mean, they already think you're my boyfriend," he grinned. "True. But right now, I'm just some guy you invented on Instagram. Might be worth clearing that up." "You think?" "I do. Especially if I plan to keep seeing you." I blinked. "You do?" He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I wouldn't be here otherwise, Eli." Something about the way he said it, simple, clear, no games, made my throat tighten. "Okay," I said, nodding. "Yeah, let's tell them." "Cool," he smiled. "Can't wait to meet Amanda and tell her I love hot yoga." I laughed. "You'll ruin her. She'll survive." We left the arcade late, tipsy on beer and sugar and whatever weird chemistry had been building between us all night. Outside, the air had turned cool. Mark slipped his jacket off and draped it over my shoulders without a word. "You're gonna freeze," I said. "I'll survive." We stood there for a moment, just like the week before, facing each other under a flickering street lamp. "You gonna kiss me this time?" I asked. He stepped in close, hands sliding to my waist, eyes locked on mine. "Was waiting for you to ask," and then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed or tentative. It was sure, warm, the kind of kiss that makes time go stupid. My hands found his jacket, then his back. His fingers slid to my jaw. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that since I saw you behind that counter," he murmured. "I've wanted to do that since I invented you," he chuckled. "So I guess we're even." Not even close. Monday morning, I came into work 10 minutes early and somehow still managed to feel late. Mark hadn't arrived yet, but that didn't stop Amanda from cornering me by the coffee machine with her usual suspicious smirk. "So," she said, dragging out the word like it held secrets, "how was your weekend?" I tried to keep my face neutral. "Chill." "Chill, huh?" She leaned in. "Did Mark make it chill?" I blinked. "Wait, how do you think I didn't recognize him?" She whispered fiercely. "The exact guy from your casual candid photos?" "Come on, Eli," I groaned. "Okay, fine. Yes, that was him." Long story. Please don't make it a thing. "Oh, honey," she said, patting my shoulder. "It's already a thing." 10 minutes later, Mark walked in like he didn't just set fire to my carefully constructed web of fake boyfriend lore. He nodded at me across the room, casual as anything, but his eyes lingered. Amanda caught the look and whispered, "You're so screwed." In the good way. The rest of the day was weirdly normal. A few people gave me knowing glances. One guy from HR asked if we were working on a project together, which I could only assume was code for making out near the vending machines. At lunch, Mark sat across from me in the break room. His expression was unreadable. Too much? He asked under his breath. I shrugged. Too late to put the toothpaste back in the tube. He smirked. That's a very specific metaphor. That's how my brain works when it's panicking. Cute. Later that week, he texted, Mark, want to come over Friday? I'll cook. Me. Are you a good cook or just confident? Mark. Let's say courageous. His apartment was warm and full of books. There were plants I didn't expect, a record player, and a sleepy dog that wasn't Leo but acted like it could have been. Her name was Bean. She's my sister's, he said, scratching her ears. I dog sit a lot. He cooked pasta, actually good pasta, creamy with garlic, and just the right amount of kick. We ate on the couch, our knees touching, sharing sips of wine, and leaning into the kind of comfortable silence I never knew I missed until it was there. I've never had anything like this, I admitted after dinner. What, pasta? No, I said, nudging his leg. This real version, Mark tilted his head. So the fake one wasn't romantic enough? The fake one was perfect, I said, but this one? He's better. He leaned in. You're saying that just to get out of doing the dishes. Absolutely. We laughed, and then we weren't laughing. His hand found my face again, and this kiss was slower, deeper, like we were both trying to memorize it. Later, in his bed, the lights off, his breath warm against my neck, I realized I didn't feel like I was lying anymore. Or pretending. This wasn't a fantasy or a cover story. This was something real. I wasn't sure what it meant yet, or where it was going, but I knew one thing for certain. Mark was no longer just a name I made up. 3 months later, Mark officially moved to the city. Not for me. At least that's what he claimed. The UX gig turned into something more permanent, he'd say with a shrug, like the universe hadn't just rearranged itself in my favor. But he picked an apartment only a 10-minute walk from mine, and on most nights, he just stayed over. My apartment started changing in small ways. A second toothbrush, socks that weren't mine in the laundry, a shelf in the fridge that was suddenly always stocked with oat milk and energy bars. He never said, I love you, not at first, but he showed it. Every day, in quiet, ordinary ways. When I stayed late at work, he brought takeout to my desk. When I had a bad week, he made playlists just to make me smile. When I caught the flu, he held my hand through a 102-degree fever and said, You're the worst patient I've ever met, but never left the couch. It wasn't perfect. We bickered over dumb things. Laundry cycles, which Trader Joe's was superior, who left the dishes soaking for 3 days. But I'd take 100 of those fights over the months I spent making them up in my head. And then one night, we were at Amanda's birthday dinner. Someone had brought up the old Mark isn't real saga. It was mostly laughter and teasing. I laughed too, but Mark caught my eye across the table. He didn't say anything, just reached out and took my hand under the table, gave it a little squeeze. Afterward, as we walked back to my place, still buzzed from champagne and cake, he stopped under a streetlight and turned to me. You remember that first day? He asked. At the coffee shop? Yeah. You looked like you'd seen a ghost. I had, I said. You were way hotter in real life. He laughed, then sobered. I almost didn't talk to you, you know. Figured it was weird. Thought maybe I should just let it go. I stared at him. Why didn't you? He hesitated, then stepped in close. Because something about you made me want to see what would happen if I didn't. There, under that stupid flickering light, in the middle of a city that used to make me feel like I was always missing something, he kissed me. Not the first kiss. Not the hottest or the most dramatic, but the one that felt the most like home. Later that night, tangled in sheets and breath and quiet, he whispered, You know I love you, right? I nodded against his chest. I've known. I just didn't want to say it before you did. He smiled, kissed the top of my head. You're such a romantic. I lied about you for 3 months. Exactly. I laughed into his skin, already imagining how we'd tell our grandkids that their grandpa once invented me because he didn't want to be set up with a yoga instructor.